Your name is? Natasha. So is this a new piece or an old piece?
It's
Quite new piece. Yeah, it sounds like a new piece. You know, I have to tell you many things. We have very short time. Before we start, there's, you know, this is probably a memory problem. You know that you played the wrong chord here. And I heard a few notes, but I don't think this is, you know about this because you're repeating the A. Can you try this once? And now you have to, right, you don't have to repeat the A in the bass because it's tight. And the same thing here, so just be careful up here. Same thing. So, the most important thing I have to tell you, before we speak about the piece, is that it seems that you know, you don't move too much, which is great. I always ask my students not to do additional movements, unnecessary movements and everything. But you are so still that it sounds like you're really almost freaking out. Like that you really you're afraid of the piece. I don't know if this is true or not, but remember, every time that we play, we should convince them we're the best people in the world playing this piece, right? I don't know if you convince them that you are the best player of the Valses and Sentimental. It doesn't sound like you are completely comfortable with it. This is a crazy difficult piece. It's very complicated, very complex. But at the same time, once you are on stage, Natasha is the best player at that time of this piece, right? Don't you feel that way? Maybe not, right? So you need to convince yourself before you convince them. If you don't convince yourself, then it's very hard to convince them. You know, and they're so wonderful pianists, so many wonderful pianists listening to you, and that's also what happens in recitals. So be convinced about yourself more. Okay. The most important thing I need to tell you is about tempos. Do you know French? A little bit, yeah. It sounds like you're not really reading the indications in French. Sometimes you are doing, you know, different things. For instance, between 6 and 7, 6 is vif, which means alive, which in my opinion should be fast, really fast, like faster than what you did. And then 7, he writes 1 vif, which is less alive. But that doesn't mean that it's dead. You know, I think 7 is extremely slow, too slow. Sometimes I felt it sounded like the tombeau de Valses, the Valses and Sentimental, like the grave of the waltzes. Also the end, the epilogue, which is like the end. I think it's too slow. It's lent, which means slow, yeah, but it's not grave, which means, you know, it would be even slower. You have to be careful because at a certain extent, at a certain speed on the piano, then you would lose the feeling of the waltz, okay? And with the orchestra, you know, this was transcribed for orchestra, and that's how we know them mostly. With the orchestra, it's different because they can sustain the sound. On the piano, you cannot really sustain the sound. So you have to choose a speed that actually works for us to understand everything that you're doing and without getting lost in a vertical way. And in order to do that, my suggestion would be to go slightly faster, okay? This is a crazy strange piece. Do you know the origin? It's a fun fact, but it's actually important for you to understand what we should underline in this piece. Do you know how it was born? So this was after Gaspard. So he wrote Gaspard, which was crazy hard and demanding, technically difficult to an incredible extent. And then he wanted to reduce his pianistic writing in a different way. And that's how he came up with this idea. But the first time that they played this piece, it was in a series of events that he was doing with his friends. And they used to play the piece without telling the name of the composer. So there was a pianist who would play a bunch of pieces, and then Ravel himself and other friends, they should write on a card the name of the composer, and then they would see, just for fun, who they wrote. Okay? So this pianist played the Valses Noble. They stopped before the end, apparently, that's what the story says. Almost like they didn't like it at first. And then they wrote a bunch of names, and Ravel was there in their friends' cards, but not in the first place. And there was Satie, there was Kodali, even Kodali, and somebody else that I don't remember. this makes you understand that people didn't recognize Ravel's style when this piece was played for the first time. And in my opinion, it's mostly because it's so incredibly, almost atonal, this piece. You know, it goes out of tonality so much. Instead, in fact, Debussy said that it was an angled piece, full of angles. So the harmonies, they all have angles, right? So I think what you're doing instead is trying to remove the angle by listening to the melody beautifully, you're singing beautifully, but then the complexity of the harmony is not really there. And this is something that you have really to take into consideration. So many times I lost the harmonic structure of the piece, which, you know, if we go from the beginning, it's very easy. If I can move here. So here, this should be, right? Then he puts the pedal, so it should be a dominant 7, and he puts the pedal of G. And then instead of F sharp, he writes E sharp, right? So instead of just D major 7, he put A sharp. So every time that there is a dissonance, you should actually enjoy it and have fun with it. Because otherwise you lose the complexity of the harmonic structure of the piece, and it sounds too simple. You know, of course the idea, he goes back to Schubert, right, with the Valse, and in Schubert, it would be, you know, this is world special. We'll never have something incredibly complex for that time. You will have a complexity in how he will put the chords in succession. Sorry. So sometimes they will be minor right away after major keys, and you would not expect them. But the complexity of the chord is not complex, of course, in Schubert. But in Ravel, it is very much. So you need to know those complexity and have fun with them. Okay, try to really come up with solutions there. The feeling of the waltz, sometimes I feel it's a little bit too serious what you play, and I lost the dancing elements. That's why I feel it's too slow. Especially, I would say 8 is way too slow, and 7 too slow as well. And 6 also could be faster. We need to have the feeling of the movement. As I told you, the orchestra can do, and usually they do, slower than us. I think with the piano you should go a little bit more. Did you translate the beginning? Which is very interesting. This French phrase. Maybe not. Yeah. So when we read scores, you know, knowing the fun facts of pieces, they can help us to understand in which direction going. And especially when something is written on the score, we should read it, right? And if it's in a different language, we'll just translate it. So this says, le plaisir délicieux toujours nouveau d'une occupation inutile. So which means the delicious, beautiful pleasure and new pleasure of something useless, which is a genius phrase. It's not by him, but it's just a quote. So the useless thing in this case for him is the waltz. So he thinks that waltz is not really important, right? He doesn't want to mean something by writing Ravel's Noble and Sentimental, which is of course very ironic. I'm not sure that he wants to do something useless. Of course it is very useless, but the origin of it, it's just a waltz. So enjoy and dance. Don't make it too serious, because the seriousness comes from how he writes it, but not from, for instance, the speed that in my opinion in general is too slow. Okay, you need to have so much more fun with the waltz. Of course, it's a transfiguration of waltz. La Valse will come after this, so this is a great start for him to go towards La Valse. And La Valse is not a real waltz, you know. In the ballet, it starts in dark, and that's the magic, you know, of the invention of Ravel. Taking something which is always has been very light-hearted, simple, and making it very complicated. You know, and that's the genius of Ravel's mind. The way he orchestrated it also was unbelievable. So we need to hear all of those things in the writing, but keep the waltz feeling and waltz movement. Can we start? By listening very much to the dissonances. Try. A little bit more. E sharp. Yes. A sharp here. So that he writes a hairpin that goes up, right? He doesn't really write a lot of dynamics as you see. It's only forte and then fortissimo, right? So I agree with you, we should not really go to something soft, but at the same time there's a hairpin, so after this, I would go much softer, so that then you have space to go up. And in a way, Natasha, feel that, like, as we said, it's a transfiguration of the waltz, so it's not a real waltz. So there's not really, people dancing to it, even if then he will use this as a ballet. But especially in the piano version, you can hear the fragmented, the way it's written, it's very fragmented. So, it's like it's coming from another place. And so you need a fraction of a second to interrupt this. That would be normal. Instead, and so you will keep this alive. Can you Many times he goes almost from a mazurka, he is having fun in changing the waltz structure. And then from a mazurka it goes to waltz. So when you go back, if you feel here, for the first time we have an accent on the downbeat. Instead before, it was going somewhere else. So you need to hear the waltz when it comes back. One single letter. A little bit more aggressive. Aggressive in a beautiful way. Sala lenti means without slowing down. Right? So, no slow. Yeah, and you can imagine different sections. So it's on the forte and then mezzo forte. So 3 different layers of sound. So the first one needs to be like a burst of energy, incredible energy with contrasting elements, and try to make the contrast even more contrasting for you so that then it will go to the audience. Remember that everything that we do, if we do 100%, then it will get there like 70%. So you need to raise the percentage here so that they get something like 100%. Okay. Now, speed of 6. Let's try it a little bit faster. So ta ta. Legato. And so when we have, this is like an Amelia, because this is in 3, and then, right? So this feels like 1, 2, 3, right? And before it was 1. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. In order to do this, you have to be much faster in how you do the arpeggio. So if you divide it into 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Almost there. Exactly. Almost like there's no arpeggio. Beautiful. Beautiful. The only thing, I would do one pedal on so that we keep this cold. If you really change it up, you see how it's written. This has long notes and this has short notes. So if you do short notes, long, so you change completely the sound. You're losing the bass already. And why keep just one pedal, the whole thing. First, if you don't catch the bass, then without the bass, the dissonance is too much. On the G.
So 4 bars.
Yes, well, 2 bars.
Oh, 2 bars.
2 bars, yeah. And if you feel it's too much, you release it a little bit. But the bass is extremely important. The bass neutralizes the dissonance. So if you do this without the bass, it will sound bad. If you do it with the bass, then it's fine. Because this neutralizes the dissonance. Just the speed. Can you do 7? So less fast than 6. 7. The beginning of 7. Yeah, but you need to be careful. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So the tempo was wrong here. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And I think this. I think this is a good tempo, not slower than this. Which means 8. Can you just start 8? 1, 2, 3. At that speed, you will be able to feel flexibility in your pulse. Otherwise, you're stuck with the slower tempo. It's never ending. We never get to the end of the phrase, and you're stuck, and you cannot really move the pulse. I mean, it has to be fluid. Pulse is fluid because it's like the heartbeat. But if it's too slow, then you're down with it. You cannot really change it. I'm sorry, we don't have time to see the details. Yeah, so if you go faster, then you will solve like half of your problems. And then think about the harmony, very much like we said, with the dissonances. Okay?